We're going to take a look at some of the standard layout options available with memoQ, and then at some of the variations, possibly improvements that can be done with these. The layouts for memoQ are found on the View ribbon, which you see here, and the controls for these are on the left side in the Layout group. memoQ comes with two standard layouts, one you see here, and then to get to the other you select Switch to Next Layout from the current layout menu, and you can see this layout, which is probably not used quite as often as the first layout, which is the default that the program shows when you start up the editor. So let's go again using Switch to Next Layout, which cycles between these two standard layouts. Now, if you make some sort of a change to one of those layouts, for example, if I widen the section where the translation results and the match comparison window are shown, as I've done here, and then I switch to the next layout, and then I switch back, you'll see that the changes that I made to that standard layout persist. If I do something that I don't like and I want to set things back to the way that they were, there's a reset command. In this case, reset current, and it returns the size of the column on the right to what it originally was. You can also control where and how the current segment that you're working on is displayed. That would be in the active row control that you see here. And the options are anywhere, which typically ends up being at the bottom of the scroll. And then you've got in the middle, using the left and right layout, which is what you see here now. So here, for example, if I'm a little bit further down, as I proceed from one segment to another, the active segment will remain in the center of the segment grid. The other possibility is the horizontal layout of the source and the target segment that you can see here. Left and right layout is shown for all of the other segments, but the current segment that's being edited is displayed with the source text on the top and the target text on the bottom. This was a layout that was created for people who were used to, for example, Trados Workbench, which used a similar layout with the macros in Microsoft Word. My personal preference is to work with the active row in the middle in the left-right configuration. Now, down at the bottom of this display, you can see the view pane. And some people are aware of the fact that the view pane is detachable, and you can do that by double-clicking on the bar that contains the name view pane. And if we do that, it forms a detached window which can be resized. And if you rearrange the layout on your screen, you could, for example, put that on the left or the right side while you're working, or even on a second monitor, which is always a very convenient thing to have available when you're working with any CAT tool, because you can put a lot of reference documents and other things there. So here, for example, would be a layout where I have a larger view of the preview off on the left. And I can resize these panes as I like. But sometimes this isn't very convenient. I have a lot of projects where I have so many hits being displayed under the translation results from translation memories, from term bases, from auto translation rules, and so forth, that the list gets very, very long, and I sometimes have to scroll quite a bit to find an entry that's interesting to me. So let's look and see if we can come up with some layouts that let us access information, for example, in the translation results that might work a little bit better. Now I'm going to go back to the View menu, and I'm going to switch to the next layout. Maximize the window again. And in this second layout, you'll notice that the translation grid is down on the bottom. I don't particularly like it there, but it is what it is. And you see the view pane here as well. So this is another possibility to work with. And here, similar to the situation that we had in the other layout, you can detach the view pane. You can do that by double-clicking, as you did before, but you may notice that the result here was a little bit different. Here, the window that was created has both the translation grid and the view pane. So I can switch between one and the other. Okay, but I can also detach each of these windows into their own relocatable and resizable window. And I can do that by double-clicking on the text label at the bottom of the window. Here, for example, translation grid. In this particular case, I detached it and it put it back into the main layout below. So here, for example, I could again resize that window and relocate the view pane, and we have something similar to what we had before. And once again, if I go to the View ribbon under Current Layout and I reset this, I go back to the view that I had before. Let's maximize that. But if I'm in that standard configuration for the second view and I double-click on the translation grid label when it's part of the larger window configuration, it separates the translation grid into a window by itself. And that window can be resized and relocated onto a second monitor if you like. And so now I have a little bit more space in which I can look at the translation grid and my progress of the translation inside of that grid. Now, if you have multiple translation documents, it's possible to detach each one of these in a similar fashion and have several translation grids displayed so that you can, for example, simply look over at another translation that you're working on at the same time and use that for a reference. And here, for example, if I now double-click on the view pane, okay, I've detached that. I can resize that window. Once again, put it onto a second monitor. If I have one available, that's very convenient. In this particular case, perhaps I'll simply resize the translation grid, keeping it over here on the left side, and then I'll resize my view pane. Okay, all of this on a small laptop screen is not necessarily very convenient. But here you see another example of what can be done. Now notice over on the right-hand side, The window that I have here contains the translation results, but now I have nearly the entire height of the window for displaying the hits from my translation memories, from my LiveDocs corpora, from my term bases, and so forth. And I can give even more room for that layout. For example, if I minimize the ribbon by clicking on the appropriate icon on the far right of the window, like here, for example. This particular layout also gives you more room for the match comparisons. So if you're working with a text that has very long sentences, you'll be able to see more of the text here and be able to see how it has changed, for example, in the current version of a sentence and a fuzzy match that might be displayed from a corpus or from a translation memory. Now, if I've got an optimized layout like this for my work that lets me see more information in the translation results, more information for the match comparisons and so forth, let's see what happens if I cycle between that and the other view. I can switch to the next layout. Okay, now you'll remember that I had already detached the view pane in that other layout, so it went to the arrangement that I had when I set that up before. And we can navigate then to the other layout, like so. So if you've rearranged your windows in the two available layouts and done so, for example, onto two different monitors, you can switch from one view to another simply by navigating on the view ribbon using the current layout control. Unfortunately, it's not possible to save these customized layouts, although memoQ will remember them. So if I quit the program and then I reopen memoQ, the last configured layouts that I had will be those that are in fact used for my work. But if I reset the layout using the reset current command under the current layout control, then I lose all of my customization for whichever of the two layouts is currently displayed. It would be nice if in a future version of memoQ it's possible to save these customized layouts, because I've got certain layouts that I like to use for certain types of work, but we at least have the flexibility to rearrange the individual panes in a way that will work better for particular projects and show us more information when we need it. Sometimes I hear complaints from users of other tools like SDL Trados Studio that memoQ lacks the flexibility of some other tools for customizing the layouts to help with your work. Actually, that's not true. The problem, as I see it, is that these options are available, but they're not widely known, nor are they usually taught to beginners or other people who take training courses on how to use the software better, because a lot of the trainers are not aware of the options, or at most they're aware of the fact that you can detach the view pane and put it somewhere. But things like how to maximize the translation results list or make some of the other configurations that are possible here never get discussed. I've never heard anybody talk about the possibility of having multiple translation grids displayed at the same time, for example. Not that one needs to do that very often, but there are situations where that can be helpful for my work. So here are some of the possibilities that you have available. Try this out on your own with your copy of memoQ, and don't be afraid of breaking anything. If you completely mess up the layout and need to start over, you can always just go to the view ribbon, to the current layout control, and reset the layout, and then you can start all over again and recustomize things the way that you want them. Now, some of you may be wondering what these other two things are under the current layout control. Uh, that's simply the name of the two layouts that we've been looking at. The default layout is this one, which if we reset the layout, we'll see what its usual appearance is. Maximize the window. Okay, this is the default layout, which is the one that all of you are in fact familiar with. And the other layout is the one called Results on Top. But as you see here, it can be customized in such a way that the results aren't exactly on top, they're off on the side and arranged in a somewhat more convenient manner.